It is, in my opinion, the finest version of King Lear that I've seen. One thing we need to remember about a tragedy, the antagonist is not the counter players. It's not his evil daughters, Goneril and Regan. We call those people counter players. Assume when you go to see a tragedy that the real antagonist are the gods, or God, or the power, the universe, nature, society generally. But these counter players are the ones who are in opposition to, but they are being manipulated by the gods. And so the inciting moment of this play, watch that very carefully. It's right at the very beginning when Lear comes in and announces that he's going to divide his kingdom, give it to the best part to the daughter who loves him the most and expresses that love. And that angers the gods. Now, another quality of the tragedy is that even though the tragic hero has made some kind of a misstep, he doesn't recognize, he thinks the counter players are his antagonists. And the counter players and the tragic hero are blind to the fact that they have offended the gods, that the tragic hero has offended the gods. But one of the things that I find satisfying about watching a good tragedy is usually there is, at some point in the play, a moment of recognition. And watch for that in this play. It comes, I think it's maybe the end of the second act. And it is at that time in the play when the king has been booted out of Goneril's home, and his second daughter, Regan, refuses to take him and his knights into her palace. And then he is angry and goes out into the storm. And something happens there in which he comes to the recognition that he has angered the gods. And this old man stands out there in the storm. And it's not just a matter of recognizing that he has angered the gods, but for the first time, this old man, who has been nothing but a king all of his life, he takes off his clothes and looks down and sees himself and sees that he is the same as other mortals. And being out in the storm, he realizes that there are many people in his kingdom who, the beggars, who he could have done so much more for. He realizes that he wronged his youngest daughter, Cordelia. And in effect, what happens is this old man who has lived his whole life becomes a responsible human being. And he has an interesting character around him. Being a king, he has a fool. He says something which I think is maybe the most important line in the whole play. He says to Lear, "You should not have been old before you were wise." And this moment of recognition out in the storm is that time, that's the defining moment in Lear's life when he recognizes that he has not only made this very last mistake, but he's made a lot of mistakes, and he becomes a responsible human being. One of the expectations of a tragedy is that when the tragic hero makes his misstep or transgression, the gods always punish excessively. And Lear does indeed pay a huge debt for the wrong that he has committed in this play. And while we may not like Lear in the beginning, if you will endure this play, to the end. There's a great reformation in this character, and I think by the time you get to the end of it, you will appreciate this person. I think that for the mature reader of Shakespeare, if you live long enough and learn to look and see some of yourself in King Lear, eventually it becomes what the critics have celebrated as the greatest tragic achievement in the history of man.